In a recent video, we spoke about the Imperial Inquisitors as one of the Imperial branches heavily, if not entirely, consisting of dark side Force users trained under the Sith Lords Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. Today, we're going to be looking at a far less official branch of Force users which existed during the Empire, the Emperor's Hands. While the Inquisitors were fairly widely known within the Empire, acting as an official organization tasked primarily with the hunting and destruction of any surviving Jedi, although in practice their task did grow beyond that scope, the Emperor's Hands were a far more secret group, to the point that most Emperor's Hands believed they alone held their position. This position was not an official rank. Instead, it denoted individuals who served the Emperor directly, engaging in subterfuge and assassination to remove the Emperor's enemies. According to the most widely known Emperor's Hand after the death of the Emperor, the future wife of Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, in her introduction in Heir to the Empire, quote, "I exposed traitors for him, brought down his enemies. I helped him keep the kind of control over the mindless bureaucracies that he needed. I had prestige and power and respect." This does make it sound like she was a bit more officially recognized as an Imperial agent than future sources do, but she was still present in the court as one of Palpatine's dancers. The kinds of targets grouped under the enemies and traitors category could include, according to the Dark Side sourcebook, quote, ambitious planetary governors, greedy crime lords, highly placed rebel sympathizers, or disloyal Imperial officers. Palpatine was able to call out to his hands anywhere in the galaxy through the use of the Force, and this is how he gave most of them their instructions, as he did with his final instructions for Mara Jade to kill Luke Skywalker, making her falsely believe the pair of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader had attacked the poor defenseless old man with their lightsabers. Mara tried to follow this instruction, but eventually she fell in love with Luke instead and the pair got married. Beyond just not being an official rank, very few people, even at the upper echelons of the Empire, knew about what any individual hand's actual connection to the Emperor was. Palpatine, in the short story called In His Image, has some internal monologuing, where he thinks about the position of the hands, noting that, quote, there had been many Emperor's Hands under less Imperial titles and even no titles at all during Palpatine's time in office, and none of them seemed content with that necessity. It was the nature of assassins, Palpatine decided. They were not team players, and they did not like this video or subscribe for more. So there are a few helpful bits of information here. For one, not every hand's role is exactly the same, especially in how they were seen by the rest of the Imperial Court or the public. There were at least 2 women in the role, including Mara Jade and a former Jedi named Rogonda Ismarin, both of whom maintained their cover close to Palpatine as dancers like we mentioned with Mara, or as concubines, allowing them to mingle with the higher social classes, which in practice gave them the access to resources and information necessary to find or spy on their targets. But it was also this proximity which allowed some other non-hands like Ysanne Isard of Imperial Intelligence to figure out the true role played by some of these people. Mara was actually arrested by Isard soon after Palpatine's death while she was consolidating her own power, and some of Isard's agents even knew to refer to her as an Emperor's Hand. So she might not have known exactly what Mara was capable of or how many hands there were, but she was at least one of the few people aware that these kinds of agents of Palpatine existed and how to find some of them. Other hands did hold other official positions in addition to their role as Emperor's Hand. The Dark Lady Lumaya, for example, more formally was placed as a spy within the rebellion, and then worked for Darth Vader as one of his shadow hands before being pulled in by Palpatine as one of his hands, maintaining a connection to both Sith Lords, and kind of informally acting as a Sith apprentice to a Sith apprentice. In one of many, many violations of the Rule of Two under this pair of Sith Lords, which isn't really unique to them, every Sith was doing it. We'll talk about some of the other hands individually and their positions, but let's go back to the second interesting bit from that prior quote. Palpatine noted that some of his hands had been under less Imperial titles, meaning he had started the hand training program during his time as Chancellor or earlier, and some of these individuals probably served similar roles to Darth Maul. Every one of the Emperor's hands or Chancellor's hands earlier on was trained in the dark side, but very few of them seem to have been trained in Sith teaching specifically though. Maul was trained as a Sith apprentice while Darth Plagueis was still alive, so his position was actually not that different from Lady Lumaya. Conversely, Mara Jade, for example, didn't really know anything about being a Sith. So the training program here wasn't universal, and with Mara, as we can kind of see from his last command to kill Luke, he would sometimes fudge the details to make her targets seem a bit more evil than they actually were. feeding into Mare's belief that she was protecting the public with all the people that she took out from the rebellion or from within the Empire. The short story where Palpatine was having those internal thoughts, though, takes place in 19 BBY, shortly after the declaration of the Empire, at which point he has already trained a Dark Jedi named Sakwee in his fully devoted service as an Emperor's Hand. And given his level of training and devotion, he had probably been in service to the Emperor for longer than just a few months. For many hands like Mara Jade and Ragonda Ismarin, they had been trained in the Force and other necessary arts since childhood by the Emperor directly, although others like Antonis Tremaine, who was an Inquisitor but also rumored to be a hand, and Arden Lin, they came into the service of the Empire as adults after prior training. Another hand named Sarkiv Quest definitely served as a hand while Palpatine was Chancellor, after being pulled from the pool of failed Jedi in the Agricultural Corps by the yet-to-be-revealed as a Sith politician who continued his training personally. Quest was eventually placed within Imperial intelligence and became another fixture in the Imperial Court. He and Ragonda Ismarin even had a child together named Irek Ismarin, who would go on to be experimented with in pretty brutal ways, twisting his mind but also giving him some neat abilities to sense and manipulate droids. Following the Emperor's death at Endor, Quest started gaining more prominence as a leader in his own right. He forged a political alliance with a royal guard named Karnor Jax, but before the pair could take over the galaxy as they hoped to, Palpatine returned. The formerly unflinchingly loyal Royal Guard and Emperor's Hand duo had grown accustomed to their new power, and so they planned to overthrow the Emperor, poisoning his clone bodies. Once Palpatine was dead for real, Karnor was installed as a new leader for the Empire, but he was quickly taken down by another Royal Guard, Kir Kanos, and with his strongest ally gone, Quest soon found himself paying for his betrayal at the hands of a loyal Emperor's Hand, Jang Droga, who executed him. We do have another example of a hand who probably served Palpatine before he became Emperor in the form of Kronel, also known as Agent Black Hole. He had been a member of the Sorcerers of Rand, another older order of Darkseid users before he became an Emperor's Hand. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on with Kronel that I'd like to cover in his own video someday, but he's another Emperor's Hand who turned into a warlord after Palpatine's first death at Endor. In the case of Arden Lin, she wasn't trained by Palpatine as a child because she was actually 24,000 plus years old, having been one of the leaders of the Legions of Leto before being defeated and put into a very deep sleep by the Jedi Grand Master Adrista Pina. Getting back to Sakwee, he was killed soon after his introduction, having been sent by Palpatine to assassinate Darth Vader as a way to further the training of his newly remade apprentice. Kui, who failed in the task as Palpatine and Kui himself expected, was then used as a template for multiple clone bodies, which were planned to be trained as Jedi themselves and incorporated into the Imperial 501st. The Dark Jedi training of the Kui clones was left in the hands of another hand named Shavon, who, upon learning he was not in fact the only hand, felt betrayed and in turn betrayed the Sith, leading the Kui clones in a rebellion against Palpatine. Shavon even attempted to convince Vader to turn against the manipulative Sidious, but Vader refused and cut him down as well, making Vader one of the leading causes of death amongst Emperor's hands. Mara Jade had a similarly shocked reaction to learning she was also not in fact unique, several years after the Battle of Endor in her case in the novel Children of the Jedi, where she found out about Ismarin being yet another Emperor's Hand, and then learning this, she was able to recontextualize some memories and realize that Lumaya, who she had met at court years before, was probably also an Emperor's Hand. The final hand we're going to talk about, because Ves Kogo and Aralina Silk barely even qualify as characters and are instead mostly just a blurb for an RPG and an MMO NPC, is Merrick Steele. Steele was one of the Empire's best pilots long before he came into his role as a hand, including a stint flying the Empire's deadly TIE Defenders. He played a key role in stopping the coup attempt by the Rogue Grand Admiral Demetrius Zarin, which also included help for Zarin by Arden Lin, bringing him to the attention of the Prophets of the Darkside and the Emperor himself. It was then discovered that he had latent Force talents, which the Emperor began to nurture as he turned Steele into one of his hands, though he primarily maintained his position as a TIE pilot. Steele, like Mara Jade, felt disillusioned with the Empire after Endor, particularly with the leadership of individuals like Isard. But his devotion returned thanks to the encouragement of Baron Soontir Fel, another pilot who recruited Steele into his 181st Fighter Wing before Fel's own defection to the New Republic and ultimately Thrawn's Empire of the Hand in the Unknown Regions. Despite Fel's departure, Steele continued to serve as a pilot within the Empire at least until the Yuuzhan Vong War. That's going to do it for our look at the Emperor's hands in Star Wars Legends. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to the patrons and channel members who make this channel possible. Special thanks as well to Marmar for editing this video. If there's another topic you'd like to see me cover on the channel in the future, let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you next time.